The morning sun shimmered across the Los Angeles tarmac as Flight 227 prepared for departure to Chicago O'Hare International Airport. The air buzzed with the familiar rhythm of rolling suitcases, boarding calls, and the faint scent of coffee from the terminal cafe. Inside the aircraft, passengers were settling into their seats, businessmen flipping open laptops, a couple taking selfies by the window, a little boy pressing his nose against the glass to watch the planes taxi by. At seat 14B, Emily Harris, a 30-year-old woman with soft brown hair tied neatly in a bun, adjusted her seatbelt. She looked calm, almost distant, gazing out at the vast California sky. She was traveling alone, heading to Chicago to visit her mother after months of avoiding home. The flight attendants moved down the aisles with polite smiles. "Good morning. Welcome aboard Flight 227, non-stop service to Chicago," one said brightly. Emily smiled faintly and closed her eyes as the engines roared to life. As the plane lifted off the ground, the cabin hummed with quiet chatter and the rustle of seatbelts being fastened. The captain's confident voice came over the intercom. "Greater than, ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Rogers. We've reached cruising altitude, smooth skies ahead. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the flight." The words were reassuring, routine. For the next 2 hours, the passengers relaxed, flipping through magazines, watching movies, and ordering drinks. The sky outside was a deep, endless blue. Everything seemed perfectly ordinary. But peace never lasts forever. At flight time, 2 hours, 32 minutes, turbulence hit. Just a small shake at first. A few passengers looked up, mildly concerned. The "fasten seatbelt" sign blinked on. A ripple of whispers moved through the cabin. The co-pilot's voice replaced the calm tone of the captain. "Greater than, ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated. We're experiencing some light turbulence." Emily glanced out the window. She'd been on plenty of flights before, but something about this one felt off. The plane dipped slightly, then steadied again. A flight attendant hurried down the aisle, picking up an empty cup that had rolled from someone's tray. She forced a smile, but Emily noticed the tension in her face. 19 minutes before landing, the captain's voice came back over the speakers, mid-sentence. "Greater than, we'll be beginning our descent into." Static. Then silence. The passengers looked around. A few laughed nervously, assuming it was just a glitch. Then, a scream from the cockpit. "Greater than, we need medical help. The captain is unconscious." The cabin erupted in confusion. Did he just say the captain? Someone gasped. "Oh my God, what's happening?" A mother clutched her child closer. A man stood up in panic, trying to peer down the aisle toward the cockpit. Flight attendants rushed forward, but the cockpit door was locked automatically, security protocol. One of them banged on it. "Greater than, first officer. Open the door." No response. The plane began to shake harder now, dipping again. Overhead bins rattled, and a drink cart rolled backward before someone caught it. Panic spread like wildfire. Emily's heart pounded. She gripped the armrests, but her eyes stayed sharp. Her instincts, long buried, started to awaken. She wasn't just another passenger. She'd once been a flight instructor, one who taught emergency landing drills. She had left aviation 5 years ago after a training crash took her best friend's life. Since then, she hadn't touched a cockpit. But now, fate had brought her back, 30,000 feet above the earth. A young flight attendant, Maya, barely in her 20s, stumbled down the aisle, face pale. "Greater than, is there a doctor on board?" she shouted, voice trembling. 2 hands went up. A middle-aged man and a woman in scrubs hurried forward. "Greater than," the captain collapsed, Maya stammered. "We can't get the door open, and the co-pilot's not responding properly." Emily stood up slowly. "Greater than, how far are we from landing?" Maya blinked at her, startled by her calmness. "Greater than, about 15, maybe 20 minutes. "Why, greater than, because," Emily said quietly, "if that door doesn't open soon, we might not make it to the runway." The cabin tilted sharply to the left. Gasps filled the air. Someone screamed, "We're falling." The overhead lights flickered, and an oxygen mask dropped halfway before retracting again. Maya clutched the seats for balance. Emily grabbed her shoulder. "Greater than, listen to me. You need to get that door open. The first officer may have passed out or panicked. I can help." Maya stared at her. You're a pilot." "Greater than, not anymore," Emily said, "but I know what I'm doing." Two attendants hurried forward, carrying a defibrillator, trying to break the cockpit door mechanism open. The passengers could hear faint sounds inside, coughing, maybe shouting. Then a thud. Someone's down in there, a man shouted from the front row. Emily squeezed through the narrow aisle, past trembling passengers clutching each other. "Ma'am, please return to your seat," one of the attendants tried to stop her, but Emily's voice was firm, steady like steel. "Greater than, if you don't let me through, none of us are landing this plane." The attendant froze, then stepped aside. Inside the cockpit, chaos reigned. The co-pilot, First Officer Jenkins, was still conscious but sweating profusely, his voice cracking over the radio. "Greater than, Mayday, Mayday, Flight 227, pilot incapacitated, descending, I can't." He coughed violently, his headset slipping. His hands trembled on the controls. Outside the door, Emily banged on it. "Greater than, First Officer Jenkins. It's Emily Harris, I'm a flight instructor. Open the door." A pause. Static crackled through the intercom. "Greater than, I can't, we're too low. Greater than, open the door, now," she shouted. Another second. Then, a click. The door unlocked. Emily pushed it open. The sight hit her like a wave. The captain was slumped against the side panel, face pale, lips blue. The co-pilot was dizzy, disoriented, and the plane was in a shallow dive. Alarms flashed across the panels, warning lights blinking red. Altitude, 12,000 feet and dropping fast. Emily's training kicked in. She grabbed the yoke, leveling the wings. "Come on, girl," she muttered, "don't fight me now." The aircraft steadied slightly, but the alarms kept screaming. "Greater than, tower, this is Flight 227, she said into the headset, voice low but steady. "Captain Rogers is unconscious. I'm assuming control." The tower operator's voice came back immediately, shaky but professional. "Greater than, copy that, Flight 227. Identify yourself." "Greater than, Emily Harris. Civilian pilot, former instructor. I have limited commercial experience." "Greater than, understood. You're cleared to descend to 5,000. Emergency crews are on standby." The co-pilot turned to her, eyes wide. You really know what you're doing." "Greater than, I hope so," Emily said softly. "Buckle up." In the cabin, passengers held hands, crying, whispering prayers. Some clutched their phones, trying to text loved ones before it was too late. A man in the back murmured, "God help us." Maya stood near the door, watching Emily's silhouette through the cockpit window, her hair slightly loose, her hands firm on the controls, her jaw set with quiet determination. Something about her presence changed everything. For the first time in 20 minutes of chaos, there was hope. Back in the cockpit, Emily's mind worked like a machine. She scanned the instrument panel. Fuel okay, hydraulics stable, altitude now holding at 9,800 feet. The co-pilot struggled to stay conscious. "Autopilot's gone," he mumbled. "Greater than, that's fine," Emily said, flipping switches. "Manual's better anyway." Outside, clouds thickened. Rain streaked across the windshield. Visibility dropped. "Greater than, Chicago Tower, this is Flight 227, she said. Requesting immediate priority landing. We have one pilot down, one incapacitated." "Greater than, roger that, Flight 227. Runway 27L is clear. Wind speed 15 knots. Emergency vehicles are waiting." "Greater than, copy. Beginning approach." She looked at the lifeless captain and exhaled shakily. "Hang in there," she whispered. "You'll see the ground again." Her hands gripped the controls tighter. She felt every vibration of the engines, every shift in the wind. She hadn't flown a jet in 5 years, not since the day her friend died in a training crash. She'd sworn never to sit in a cockpit again. But now, with 200 lives behind her, she had no choice. In the cabin, a flight attendant picked up the intercom. "Greater than, ladies and gentlemen, please remain calm. We have an experienced pilot assisting in the cockpit. Everything possible is being done to ensure your safety." The words steadied some passengers, though tears still fell. A small girl asked her mother, "Mommy, are we going to be okay?" Her mother hugged her tightly. "Yes, sweetheart, that lady up there, she's going to save us." The clouds parted briefly. Through the window, Chicago's skyline appeared in the distance, faint, blurred by rain. Emily's heart raced. "There you are," she murmured. She began her descent checklist from memory, step by step. Greater than, flaps 1, gear down, speed brake armed. The co-pilot watched her, replacing fear. Greater than, you left flying. He asked quietly. Greater than, yeah, she said. But I guess flying didn't leave me. Dash dash dash. A new alarm sounded, overspeed. The descent was too steep. Emily pulled back gently, adjusting trim. Not today, she whispered. Sweat ran down her temple, but her eyes stayed locked on the instruments. Greater than, tower, this is Flight 227. Approaching final at 3,000 feet. Greater than, copy, 227. You're clear to land. Fire and medical crews are standing by. Dash dash dash. In the cabin, everyone braced. A man clutched a cross necklace. A woman whispered to her husband, who is she? He replied, whoever she is, she's a miracle. Dash dash dash. The plane sliced through the clouds, runway lights glowing ahead like a river of stars. Rain hammered the fuselage, wind buffeting the wings. Emily steadied the yoke, heart pounding but focus unbroken. She was back where she belonged, in the sky, in control. The storm wrapped around Flight 227 like a dark ocean in the sky. Lightning danced across the clouds, flashing through the cabin windows. The aircraft groaned as the wind pushed against it, each gust heavier than the last. In the cockpit, Emily Harris sat in the captain's seat, her jaw clenched, her fingers locked around the control column. Her breathing was slow, controlled, the kind of focus that only years of flight experience could teach. Beside her, First Officer Jenkins fought to stay alert. Sweat poured down his forehead, and his voice trembled each time he tried to speak into the radio. Greater than, tower, F Flight 227, pilot down, making emergency approach. Static swallowed the words. A crack of thunder shook the plane. Emily steadied the yoke, her eyes scanning the instruments. Altitude, 9,600 feet. Airspeed, climbing too high. She adjusted the throttle gently. The rain lashed the windshield like bullets, the wipers squealed in protest. She leaned forward, squinting into the storm. The ground below was invisible, only a swirling mass of gray and black. Greater than, come on, she whispered. Just show me something. Dash dash dash. In the main cabin, chaos simmered. Passengers clutched one another. Some cried openly, others whispered prayers. A few tried to call loved ones, their trembling hands struggling to dial through tears. A voice cracked through the noise, Maya, the young flight attendant. Greater than, please remain seated, everyone. Fasten your seatbelts and stay calm. Her words trembled, but she forced herself to sound brave. She looked toward the cockpit, to the silhouette of the woman who had taken command. The memory of that voice still rang in her ears, firm, confident, almost defiant. Greater than, I can fly. And somehow, that voice made her believe it. Dash dash dash. Inside the cockpit, the tension thickened. An alarm blared, terrain warning. Emily's pulse spiked. Greater than, we're dropping too fast. Jenkins croaked, gripping the panel. She pulled back on the controls, leveling the descent. The aircraft shuddered but responded. The nose rose, and the altimeter steadied. Hold together, she muttered under her breath. You can do this. Through the windshield, a flicker of light broke through the clouds. The faint orange glow of the city below, Chicago, fighting to pierce the storm. A rush of relief washed through her veins. Greater than, I see the city, she said into the radio. Chicago Tower, this is Flight 227. Requesting emergency landing clearance. Greater than, Flight 227, we read you, the controller answered, his voice tight but steady. Winds 25 knots, heavy rain. You're cleared for runway 27L. Emergency crews are waiting. Greater than, copy that, Emily replied. Jenkins turned to her, his face pale. Crosswinds that high, we'll never stabilize. Emily's eyes never left the instruments. Greater than, if we wait any longer, we'll run out of fuel. We're going in. He swallowed hard and nodded. Then we do this together. Dash dash dash. She moved through the landing checklist, speaking softly to herself, every switch, every lever, every breath timed with precision. Greater than, flaps full, gear down, speed set. The heavy rumble of the landing gear echoed beneath their feet. The entire cockpit shook as the plane descended through the storm. A flicker of memory pierced her focus. Her last flight as an instructor, the sound of metal scraping and engine screaming, the friends she couldn't save. The memory that had grounded her for 5 years. Now she was back at 30,000 feet, fighting for hundreds of lives. Greater than, Not this time, she whispered. Dash dash dash. In the cabin, a jolt sent trays flying. Someone screamed. Greater than, we're falling. Maya gripped the overhead bin for balance and shouted above the chaos. Greater than, we're landing. Hold on tight. She glanced. Again at the cockpit door, at the woman on the other side, and a spark of hope cut through her fear. Dash dash dash. Altitude. 3,000 feet. The city lights shimmered below, tiny veins of gold between the clouds. Greater than, there you are, Emily murmured. She eased the throttle. The wind shoved the plane sideways, the wings tilted dangerously. Greater than, we're drifting. Jenkins warned. Greater than, I see it. She adjusted the rudder, her muscles straining. Countering crosswind, the aircraft steadied, wings leveling out again. Greater than, tower, flight 227 on final, she said. Runway 27L in sight. Greater than, roger that, came the reply. Wind speed 25 knots, gusting. Proceed with caution. Emily gave a humorless laugh. Always do. Dash dash dash. The rain thickened again, blurring everything. Runway lights flickered in and out of view, distant, ghostly. Speed's too high, Jenkins muttered. Greater than, we'll bleed it off before touchdown, she answered, voice calm. Her tone alone gave him courage. He stared at her, at the quiet determination in her eyes, and realized she wasn't just flying the plane. She was fighting for it. Dash dash dash. Altitude. 1,000 feet. Speed. 170 knots. The runway stretched out below like a river of silver fire. Greater than, easy now, Emily said, guiding the plane lower. A sudden gust slammed the aircraft to the right. Greater than, wind shear. Jenkins shouted. Emily countered instantly. Throttle up, slight left rudder, pitch correction. The plane jolted, steadied, then dipped again. She fought it like she was wrestling with the storm itself. Her arms burned. Her pulse thundered in her ears. Greater than, come on, girl, she growled. You've got this. Dash dash dash. 500 feet. An alarm shrieked. Too low, terrain. Greater than, ignore it, she said. We're fine. 300 feet. The runway lights flared brighter, close enough to touch. Emily flared at the perfect second, instinct, not logic. The rear wheels hit the runway with a brutal jolt. The aircraft bounced, then slammed down again. Sparks burst from the landing gear. Brakes screamed. Reverse thrusters roared. The cabin filled with the sound of metal grinding and passengers crying out. The plane skidded sideways, hydroplaning on the soaked runway. Greater than, hold, hold. Emily hissed, forcing the rudder straight. The aircraft corrected its drift, tires gripping the wet asphalt. Dash dash dash. Speed. 90 knots, 60, 40. And then, stillness. The engines wound down. The alarms went silent. For the first time in what felt like forever, no one spoke. Then, one clap, then another. Then the whole cabin erupted in cheers and sobs. Maya covered her face, tears of relief streaming down her cheeks. In the cockpit, Jenkins exhaled shakily. Greater than, you did it, he said. You actually did it. Emily stared ahead at the rain-soaked runway, her hands still gripping the controls. For a moment, she couldn't speak. Finally, she whispered, greater than, no, we did it. Dash dash dash. Outside, emergency vehicles swarmed the plane, red and blue lights flashing through the mist. Firefighters rushed to the sides. Medics waited near the gate. The cockpit door opened. Maya stepped in, trembling but smiling. Greater than, they're safe, she said softly. Every single one of them. Emily rose slowly from the captain's seat. Her legs felt heavy, her body numb. She followed Maya out into the cabin. Every face turned toward her, eyes wide, mouths open in awe. A man near the front whispered, that's her. A child pointed, Mom, that's the lady who flew the plane. Applause broke out again, louder this time, echoing through the cabin. Emily smiled faintly, humbled and exhausted. Greater than, it's over, she said quietly. You're all safe. Dash dash dash. Minutes later, on the tarmac, paramedics carried the unconscious captain onto a stretcher. Rain still fell in soft sheets, glimmering under floodlights. A medic turned to Emily. Greater than, he's stable. He'll make it, she nodded, her throat tightening. Good. She stepped away from the plane, the storm fading behind her. The horizon was beginning to glow, dawn pushing through the darkness. She closed her eyes and took a long breath of rain-damp air. For 5 years, she had blamed herself for one crash she couldn't prevent. Now, she had saved hundreds. Dash dash dash. News cameras caught her as she walked through the terminal, soaked and tired, her hair clinging to her face. Reporters shouted questions. Greater than, "Ma'am, who are you? Are you a commercial pilot? How did you land that plane?" She paused only once, turned toward them, and said simply, "Greater than, when someone has to fly, they fly. That's all." Then she walked on, quietly, humbly, as headlines began to light up screens around the world. The woman WHO brought Flight 227 home. A30YEAR old civilian pilot saves 211 lives in mid-air crisis. Dash dash dash. That night, sitting alone in her hotel room overlooking the city she had almost never reached, Emily finally let herself cry. Not out of fear, but relief. The storm outside was gone now, replaced by a soft, endless quiet. She looked at her reflection in the window, the same woman who once promised she'd never fly again, and whispered. The world outside was still wrapped in drizzle when Flight 227 finally rolled to a stop at Chicago O'Hare. The passengers inside were alive, trembling, crying, hugging strangers they'd never met before today. And at the heart of it all stood Emily Harris, the woman from seat 14B. The one who said 5 words that saved over 200 lives. Greater than, I can fly this plane. Dash dash dash. Cloud with rain 1. The aftermath. As the cabin doors opened, paramedics rushed in first. They carried stretchers, oxygen masks, medical kits, ready for the worst. But what they found was a miracle, not a single fatality. "Captain's breathing," a medic called out. "He's stable, pulse weak, but holding." Emily watched quietly as they lifted him from the cockpit. For a moment, her hand brushed against his, cold and lifeless. Something flickered in her eyes, a memory, almost too painful to face. "Greater than, you did good, Captain," she whispered. "You brought them home." A few passengers clapped weakly, then louder, until the entire plane erupted in applause again. Cameras flashed from phones, voices shouted her name, though no one even knew it yet. Dash dash dash. Outside, the rain turned into mist. Fire trucks and ambulances lined the runway, red and blue lights flickering through the fog. The air smelled like jet fuel and ozone, the scent of fear and relief intertwined. An air traffic controller stepped forward, his headset still on. "Greater than, ma'am, are you one of the pilots?" Emily shook her head, almost embarrassed. "Not anymore." He blinked. "You used to fly, greater than, once," she said softly. "A long time ago." Then she walked away, her shoes splashing through puddles on the tarmac, each step carrying the weight of everything she had just done. Dash dash dash. Hotel 2. The media storm. By morning, every major network in America was running the same headline. Civilian woman lands passenger jet after pilot collapses. Miracle landing. Hero from seat 14B saves 211 lives. Reporters camped outside the hotel where survivors were staying. Cameras rolled. Microphones flashed. Greater than, who is Emily Harris? Was she a trained pilot? How did she know what to do? Emily avoided the spotlight, staying quiet while the airline scrambled to make statements. But silence only fueled curiosity. Within hours, journalists found old records, photos of her in a pilot uniform, her name printed on the fuselage of a Cessna training jet. The internet lit up. Greater than, former Air Force pilot saves Flight 227. Grounded aviator returns to skies in moment of crisis. But the truth was far more complicated. Dash dash dash. Candle 3. The past she tried to forget. 5 years earlier, Emily had been a flight instructor at SkyWest Aviation Academy. A brilliant one, calm, precise, confident. Until that night, a training flight gone wrong. A student froze during descent. A stall warning blared. The aircraft clipped a power line and went down in flames outside Denver. Emily had survived. Her student, 19-year-old Aaron Blake, had not. She had begged the board to blame her, to strip her license, to punish her for the mistake she couldn't forget. Instead, they called it pilot error and closed the case. But she never flew again. Greater than, I promised myself, she once said, that I'd never touch a yoke again. Not after that night, until Flight 227. Until destiny forced her back into the sky. Dash dash dash. TV4. The interview. 2 days later, she sat in a quiet hotel conference room. A single camera pointed at her. Across the table, journalist Lena Rhodes, known for her calm, empathetic style. Greater than, Emily, she began softly, You've been called a hero. How does that feel? Emily smiled faintly. It doesn't. It feels like responsibility. Like I was just doing what had to be done. Greater than, did you ever imagine you'd be in that position again? Emily shook her head. I thought that part of my life was over. But when I saw the captain go down, when I heard the panic, something inside me just switched on. Greater than, was it fear? She paused. No, it was instinct. Once you've flown, you never forget. It's like breathing. The sky doesn't let you forget who you are. Lena leaned forward. There's something else. The captain you replaced, Captain Robert Blake. Was he related to your student, Aaron Blake? Emily froze. Her breath caught. She hadn't known. Not until now. Her voice trembled. Greater than, his father. Lena nodded gently. Yes, Captain Blake was Aaron's father. The room fell silent. Emily's eyes glistened, her hands trembling slightly. Greater than, I didn't know, she whispered. If I had, she stopped herself, swallowing hard. Greater than, maybe this was how it was meant to be, Lena said softly. To save the man who lost his son. To finish what you couldn't that day. A tear rolled down Emily's cheek. Greater than, then I guess, she said quietly, the sky finally forgave me. Airplane 5. The captain wakes. 3 days after the landing, in the sterile light of a hospital room, Captain Robert Blake opened his eyes. Emily stood nearby, uncertain whether she should be there. He turned his head slowly, his voice hoarse. Greater than, you were the one who flew, weren't you? She nodded, her throat tight. Greater than, you saved my crew, he said. My passengers, my life. Tears welled in her eyes. Your son was my student. He blinked, stunned. You knew Aaron. Greater than, yes, he was brave. He froze for a moment, but he didn't fail. I did. I couldn't save him. Captain Blake reached out, placing a trembling hand over hers. Greater than, you just saved 200 lives, he said softly. That's more than enough redemption for both of us. For the first time in years, Emily let herself cry, not from guilt, but from release. Sunrise 6. The recognition. A week later, the FAA held a small ceremony at O'Hare. Airline officials, rescue teams, and passengers attended. Emily stood at the front, in a simple navy jacket, no medals, no uniform. When her name was called, applause thundered through the hangar. The director spoke. Greater than, when faced with the impossible, she didn't hesitate. She remembered what it meant to fly, and reminded us all what courage looks like. He handed her a small silver plaque. In honor of exceptional bravery and skill, Flight 227, October 18, 2025. She took it quietly, holding it as if it were fragile. Then she looked up, smiled faintly, and said, Greater than, this isn't mine alone. It belongs to every person who believed we could make it down. The flight attendants, the passengers, the man in seat 9C who prayed out loud for everyone. We did this together. The crowd rose to their feet. Sun behind small cloud 7. The sky again. Months later, Emily returned to her hometown near the coast. She spent mornings walking by the airfield, the same one where she once taught new pilots. One day, a familiar voice called out, Greater than, Ms. Harris, you used to be my instructor. She turned to see a young woman in a flight suit, smiling nervously. Greater than, I just got my license, the girl said. Because of you. Because I saw what you did that day. Emily felt a lump in her throat. Keep flying, she whispered. No matter how scared you get. The sky always remembers. The girl nodded, eyes shining. I will. As the small training plane took off, Emily watched it rise into the blue, sunlight glinting off its wings. For the first time in years, the sound of an engine didn't hurt. It healed. Dove 8. Epilogue. Later that evening, she sat by the shore, waves rolling softly against the sand. The sunset painted the horizon gold and crimson, the same colors that had once terrified her, now wrapping her in peace. Her phone buzzed. A message from Captain Blake. Greater than, he would have been proud of you. Aaron always said you were the best teacher he ever had. She smiled, her tears mixing with laughter. Then she typed back, Greater than, tell him I finally learned how to land. She looked up at the sky, the same sky that had taken everything from her, and then given it all back. And somewhere in the distance, a plane crossed the clouds, its lights twinkling like a heartbeat in the heavens. Dove final lines. The world would forever remember that day not as a disaster, but as the day a forgotten pilot remembered who she was, and turned fear into flight.